The Civil War was effectively over, and hundreds of Union prisoners were finally going home. Then the steamboat carrying them north exploded on the Mississippi. The Sultana disaster killed more people than the sinking of Titanic would nearly half a century later, yet it quickly faded behind the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and the end of the war. Its central contradiction is brutal. Men who survived prison camps died because one riverboat was asked to carry far more people than it was designed to move safely. Sultana was a wooden sidewheel steamboat built for the Mississippi trade. Its legal capacity was measured in hundreds, not thousands. In April 1865, the federal government paid private vessels to return released prisoners from Vicksburg toward northern states. Each transported soldier meant government reimbursement, so speed, paperwork, and passenger count carried financial pressure. At the docks, groups of exhausted men waited for transport after months in Confederate prison camps, including Andersonville and Cahaba. Before departure, Sultana already had a boiler problem. A leak appeared in one of the 4 tubular boilers. A local boilermaker reportedly wanted a more extensive repair, but the boat's schedule encouraged a temporary patch. The distinction matters. The later explosion cannot be reduced to one cartoon villain or one loose plate. Boiler condition, water level, river movement, loading, and operating decisions interacted inside a system that stored enormous thermal energy. The passenger count climbed to roughly 2,000 people aboard a boat certified for a fraction of that number. Released soldiers crowded decks, passageways, and every open surface. Their combined weight did more than reduce comfort. It altered the vessel's trim and stability. On a winding river, passengers shifting from side to side, and the hull listing could change how water covered the long boilers. A boiler partly uncovered by water can develop dangerously overheated metal. Steam pressure itself is only part of the mechanism. A boiler contains hot water held above its normal atmospheric boiling point. If the pressure boundary fails, part of that water can flash rapidly into steam and expand. The release can tear adjacent boilers, decks, and structural members apart. On Sultana, investigators and later historians have debated the exact initiating failure, but the overloaded repaired working boiler system is the verified setting, not sabotage mythology. Sultana left Vicksburg on April 24 and traveled upriver. Flood conditions had made the Mississippi broad, fast, and full of debris. The boat stopped at Memphis, unloaded cargo, and crossed the river to take on coal. Around 2 in the morning on April 27, north of Memphis near a cluster of islands, the boilers exploded. The blast ripped through the central part of the vessel and threw burning timber, machinery, and people into the dark river. Fire turned the wreck into a second hazard. Wooden upper decks collapsed while survivors searched for any path away from flames. Many former prisoners were physically weakened and could not swim strongly in cold, flooded water. The river carried debris and separated men from floating pieces of the boat. Rescue depended on nearby vessels, local residents, and anyone who could reach the water before current, exposure, or fire overwhelmed survivors. The disaster produced chaotic numbers. Passenger records were incomplete, duplicate names existed, some men boarded without appearing on the final list, and survivors dispersed rapidly after rescue. Modern accounts commonly estimate about 1,800 deaths, but the precise total remains uncertain. Responsible history preserves that uncertainty while recognizing the scale. Sultana ranks among the deadliest maritime disasters in United States history. Why was the vessel so crowded? The federal transport payment system rewarded volume, while officers controlled how returning prisoners were assigned to boats. Investigations heard allegations of corruption and favoritism, but individual legal responsibility proved difficult to establish. The broader incentive failure is clearer than every personal accusation. Capacity limits, inspection, and repair judgment weakened when money and urgency all pointed toward immediate departure. The temporary boiler repair became a symbol because it is easy to picture. But a good accident investigation resists a single-cause story. Tubular boiler design, sediment in river water, uneven water coverage during listing, excessive load, maintenance pressure, and operating conditions could reinforce one another. The lesson is not that one patch alone destroyed the boat. It is that several safety margins were consumed before the first metal tore. News coverage was muted by national events. Lincoln had been assassinated less than 2 weeks earlier. John Wilkes Booth was killed one day before the Sultana explosion, and the Confederate collapse dominated newspapers. The victims were also mostly ordinary enlisted men returning from captivity rather than famous commanders. A catastrophe can be enormous and still disappear when public attention is already saturated by a larger historical transition. Sultana's final voyage shows what overload really means. It is not merely a number printed beside a doorway. Capacity protects stability, escape, structural load, and the machinery that keeps a vessel alive. The returning soldiers had already paid the cost of war. A transport system then placed schedule, reimbursement, and hope ahead of the remaining engineering margins. The boat did not fail without warning. The system had spent its warnings before leaving Vicksburg.